Hey, did you read this story or hear about this story about Pathfinder Health Administration? Or Health Innovations, rather? Pathfinder Health Innovations is a company based out of Kansas. Kansas, of course, is where one of the Koch brothers lives, and it's where Sam Brownback, after he left the U.S. Senate, went to be governor. And he said, I'm going to do an experiment here. We're going to try this Reaganomics thing, and we're going to do it right. We're going to cut the taxes on rich people really, really big. We're going to jack up the taxes on poor people, and you're going to see prosperity like you never saw before. Right. Didn't quite work out that way. I mean, he's still doing it. He's still moving forward with it. So the CEO of Pathfinder, and you can find this over at their website, pathfinderhi.com. / Kansas - isn't / home or - home - anymore / wrote an op-ed, basically, kind of my message to the world. His name is Jeff Blackwood. He's the CEO of Pathfinder Health Innovations. And it's a healthcare technology company, specifically to help individuals with autism lead more productive social lives. And so here's a company that, works in the healthcare business with people who are struggling. And he says in his open letter, he says, it's not so much that I'm moving the company to Missouri as I'm moving it away from Kansas. Now that's interesting, moving it away from Kansas. He says, in recent years, Kansas has become a battleground for conservative ideals. He talks about how, traditionally it was a fairly moderate state. They go back and forth, Democratic governor, Republican governor. It was always, it was kind of the moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats. It's the Midwest, it's Kansas. And then he says, but the election of hyper-conservative Sam Brownback as governor heralded a new age of far right-wing ideology. Yes, it did. And he points out it wasn't just that that Brownback was a conservative. It was that he is seen as a tool of the Koch brothers and ALEC, a conservative think tank and lobbying organization. Now, ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council. It was started back in the late 70s, early 80s. One of the co-founders of it was, one of the guys who said, I don't want everybody to vote. It's been funded heavily by the Koch brothers and other right-wing groups as well. And a couple of times a year, ALEC has meetings around the country where they bring together mostly Republican. There have been one or two Democrats who've shown up, but they're very, very few and far between. Mostly Republican legislators and lobbyists. And 50-50 in a room. And they have different categories. Okay, here's the financial services, here's the pharmaceuticals, here's the oil industry, here's the, pick what you want. Put them together in a room, and they evaluate legislation that has been written by the lobbyists and the corporations. And when the Republican legislators say, okay, I can support that, and of course they're all getting campaign contributions from these people and stuff like that. It's very bizarre. So anyway, he says it wasn't just that Brownback, he said they were a tool of the Koch brothers and ALEC, a conservative think tank and lobbying organization. Brownback uses influence and funding to eliminate moderate Republicans from the Kansas legislature and installed his hand-picked conservative cronies. He couldn't do the same with the Kansas Supreme Court, which has ruled a number of the conservative legislature's laws unconstitutional, as Brownback's administration decided to. So Brownback's administration decided to threaten to cut off funding to the court, and is actively pursuing a legislation to impeach the Supreme Court. I mean, people talk about, Donald Trump being this generation's Mussolini or Berlusconi. I mean, it's happening right here in the United States. It's happening in Michigan. It's happening in Louisiana. It's happening in North Carolina. It's happening in Kansas. It's happening in Texas. He says Kansas. It's happening in Florida. He says Kansas has become a test center. This is the CEO of the company that is leaving Kansas. He says Kansas has become a test center of trickle-down economics, espoused by economist Arthur Laffer during the Reagan years. Nowhere has there been a more thorough implementation of Laffer's policy recommendations, and nowhere has there been a more dramatic failure of government. Yeah. This is such a brilliant and articulate letter. He says, under Brownback's direction, Kansas implemented an unprecedented tax cut in 2012, eliminating taxes for LLCs and professional firms. LLCs are limited liability corporations. It's one form of corporation. And professional firms, this is typically doctors, lawyers, things like that. He says, for full disclosure, we are a C corporation. That's a standard corporation. And making the largest cuts in the highest tax brackets. Oh, what a surprise. Sam Brownback cut taxes on rich people in Kansas. That's what he said he was going to do. Okay. He shifted taxes to create a heavier burden on property and sales tax, which typically represent a larger burden on lower income brackets. Brownback declared that this tax cut would be a shot of adrenaline for the Kansas economy. But the reality is that the tax cuts have had the opposite effect. Kansas lags neighboring states in job growth for 11 of the past 12 months. Kansas has dramatically missed revenue targets, falling deeper in debt, and facing another round of degraded bond ratings. Turns out that Koch brothers economic stuff that, they're spending millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that your kids are taught or you are taught in your local college. Turns out it doesn't work. It never did work. It's never worked anywhere. There has never been a country in the world where Reaganomics has been tried, trickle-down economics, libertarian economics, you name it, and it has succeeded. This is my rant, not his, but back to his rant. He says the worst part is that the burdens for the shortfalls rest on the shoulders of those who can least afford it, children and the developmentally disabled. Keep in mind, his company, a health services company, provides services to the developmentally disabled. He says one of Brownback's first actions was to close the Lawrence office for Kansas Social and Rehabilitation Services, SRS. This agency provided services for low-income children and developmentally disabled, and access to the Lawrence office was crucial for people in that community to receive services. Well, hey, it's for low-income children. You think Sam Brownback gives a rat's ass about low-income children? Or the billionaires who support him, or who came up with this weird way of marketing the idea to average American people that if you cut taxes on billionaires and raise taxes on working people, somehow everything gets better. Anyway, back to the letter. Brownback declared this tax cut would be a shot of adrenaline to the Kansas economy. Okay, I already read that. For 11, the worst part, okay, he says one of Brownback's first, I already read that too. One of Brownback's first actions was to close the Lawrence office of Kansas Social Rehabilitation Service. This agency provided services for low-income children and the developmentally disabled. Their only option, this is for the poor people and developmentally disabled, their only option was to try to figure out how to get transportation to the Topeka SRS 30 miles away. Not an easy task. The closure of the Lawrence office was supposed to save the government $400,000 a year. Now, remember that $400,000. Okay, because at the same time, Brownback decided to pursue a personal vendetta against the Kansas Bioscience Authority, an organization created to spur the economic development of bioscience companies in Kansas. Brownback was convinced that funds were being misused, so he decided to spend over $400,000, conveniently the same amount of money that would have kept the Lawrence SRS office open, on lawyers and auditors to pore over the books of KBA. In the end, they found a total of $5,000 in misused funds, which the former KBA president repaid with a personal check. You get this? Sam Brownback cuts $400,000 out of services for poor people and then says, oh, in this program over here, we're going to spend $400,000 investigating what they're doing. And what they found was that they had, wasted, in quotes, $5,000. It goes on and on. I mean, it's just an astonishing story. Just an astonishing story. Jeff Blackwood, a man of considerable courage.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So when is it that Americans are going to figure out, or have they already figured out, and does that account for why our electoral politics are so strange, that we're being screwed by these people?
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.